appears that the GOP attempt to steal the Supreme Court election in North Carolina has failed. All right. Federal judge ruled on Monday that North Carolina election officials must certify Democrat Allison Riggs as the winner of a very important state Supreme Court election. Now, Riggs currently sits on that court, and she defeated Jefferson Griffin, a Republican appellate judge, by just 734 votes in November. So that was a really, really, really close Supreme Court election. Now, of course, Griffin, he exercised his right to do recounts, and that's totally fine. There were several recounts, and those recounts just continued to confirm her win. They were not happy about that, so he continued to try to challenge that to get a lot of votes thrown out. After Election Day, Griffin challenged more than 60,000 votes, mostly, of course, in Democratic-leaning counties, claiming that election officials had wrongly allowed them to count. He literally wanted them to throw out legitimate votes so that he could win the election. Thankfully, that did not happen. In fact, the judge, Richard Myers II, agreed with Riggs and said that Griffin was simply trying to change the rules of the election after Election Day. Had they attempted to maybe change the rules several months out before the election, then, things might have ended up differently, okay? But he tried to do it afterwards, and that's a no-no. I think it's pretty obvious what he was trying to do. Now, that said, some more details about that. Griffin's challenges had focused on 3 different groups of voters. The largest was tens of thousands of people whose voter records lacked a driver's license number. Not everybody who votes has a driver's license. Or the last 4 digits of their social security numbers. A few thousand more were overseas voters who had failed to provide photo ID. There was also a smaller group of voters who were labeled never residents, people who had turned 18 while living abroad and claiming North Carolina as their residence. Now, Griffin wanted all those people thrown out. Now, Myers, however, in his ruling, disagreed. In fact, he wrote, "This case concerns whether the federal constitution permits a state to alter the rules of an election after the fact and apply those changes retroactively to only a select group of voters, and in so doing, treat those voters differently than other similarly situated individuals. This case is also about whether a state may redefine its class of eligible voters, but offer no process to those who may have been misclassified as ineligible," Myers wrote. To this court, the answer to each of those questions is no. Denied. Fail. Look, here's the thing. It was pretty clear from the start that many of these challenged voters were already eligible to cast a ballot, and the only reason that they're getting kicked out is because of who they voted for. Look, I mean, Riggs's own parents were the ones that were challenged, okay? Among those. I think it's pretty obvious what they were doing here. Now, The Guardian and other news outlets spoke to several of these challenged never residents, right, who said that they were temporarily abroad, had lived in North Carolina, and were confused about why they were challenged. Well, I think we know the answer. Griffin lost, yet was backed up by the North Carolina Court of Appeals, who actually ruled in Griffin's favor, saying that more than 60,000 voters had to prove their eligibility needlessly. Yeah, of course. That said, the North Carolina Supreme Court stepped in and narrowed the number of ballots at issue to about 1,500, which is still double the amount that Riggs had won by. This should not have been challenged in the first place, though. So now Myers, who happens to be a Trump appointee himself, pointed that out. He wrote, "You establish the rules before the game, you don't change them after the game is done." Well, that's exactly what they were trying to do. The only reason that they tried to change these rules in the first place is because they lost. That's right. Had they been able to successfully challenge this, they'd probably attempt to do this to steal future elections. Thankfully, they lost. But we have gotten to the point now where Republicans, they're not just doing voter suppression, because they've been doing that for a very long time, okay? No, now they're trying to invalidate legal votes after the vote, after the election. But only in races, of course, they don't win, and they try to do so by retroactively changing the rules. They're moving the goalposts. Thing is, there are major implications to these Supreme Court races. Okay, the court adjudicates on issues like redistricting. So these judges can and will determine the makeup of Congress because of those maps. Okay, that's why Republicans are so focused on this, on the judiciary. They want to gerrymander those districts so they can keep the House of Representatives under their control. And they're getting real desperate in order to do so. Okay, because what they're doing is they're expecting a wipeout. I think the midterms are definitely going to be a Trump referendum. And so this is, I think, one of the many efforts that the Republican Party is attempting to try to tilt those elections back in their favor. I am glad to see, though, that this particular effort has failed. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell icon in order to get notified whenever a new video is released. And if you want to support independent, progressive media through this difficult time where it seems like everybody is shutting down, you can become a member on our YouTube page, you can become a subscriber on Facebook, or you can go to my Patreon. It's patreon.com/Jeff Waldorf. Thank you.